Ain't got no complaints with this fresh coat of paint that we put up to cover the haint's taint. Haint being the old Appalachian word for ghost. I am your host, William Big T Thrasher. With me, as always, is Michael Jolly Varhola, and joining us tonight once again is friend of the show, Amanda Kahl. And we are D Infinity Live, your multi-platform, multi-publisher, all gaming supplement. And tonight, our topic is character art. All the things that visually represent your character, be they illustrations, PC portraits, collages, sculptures, whatever your talent is. That's what we're going to discuss tonight. But before we get into that, Mike, why don't you tell me what's going on with our co-publisher Skirmisher this week?
Well, we have been true to our promise of releasing one new thing a week, and we've also been true to our promise of commemorating World War I. This is the 100-year anniversary of World War I, and we are commemorating that in a fun and useful way. We just released La Bayonette number 47, No Marin, which means Our Marines. And it is a complete PDF copy of a 1916 French magazine with a lot of cartoons and sort of tongue-in-cheek art. It was published during World War I. But rather than just publish this magazine that most of our readers can't even read, we've provided all of the art from it as high-resolution stock art that people can use in any publishing projects. So this is World War I era art. This particular set of 35 images includes lots of pictures of French Marines and combat during World War I. But this is the kind of stuff that people can use in any kind of publishing projects at all. So I would encourage people to check out La Bayonette number 47 on Drive-Thru RPG and other sites, but that is the first one that our stuff tends to go up on. And a couple of our other books are actually continuing to hang tough there. Our 100 Oddities from a Creepy Old House is currently our most popular publication. So thanks to your efforts on that, Will.
Thank you.
And then Clint Staples' The Mythos Society Guide to New England is continuing to be one of our most popular publications. So the Mythos Society Guide and your 100 Oddities for a Creepy Old House and La Bayonette number 47 are our three top products this week, and I'd encourage people to check those out.
Excellent. And while we're on the subject, what is going on with our website, d-infinity.net? I know we've had a lot of new content up over the past week.
Yeah, a lot of new content. Clint Staples, I think, for the fourth week in a row, wins the award for having the most and the best variety of stuff. He's been posting material tying with a game system called Bash. It's a superhero system, but he's been posting things that tie in with his Barsoom, or Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars campaign. So he posted stats for a ship and for some sky pirates and some other interesting things. People should check that out. He's continued to post at least one item a week tying in with RuneQuest. So D Infinity Online is a true multi-platform game magazine. And then there are some interesting articles up there. Eric Lee, MD, our staff physician, has got a good piece called The Poetry of Science that really talks about how science and poetry are considered to be really almost opposite disciplines, but how in antiquity they were very, very closely related. That's interesting for anyone who has any kind of a medical angle in their games. Chris Van Deelen talks about what he's going to be doing over the coming year. He's a very prolific writer and game developer. And then Derek Holland has a great article on spell specialization for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I just posted a classic time machine piece. That means a piece from a classic, now out of print game publication on creating random terrain. So there's a ton of good stuff up on there. d-infinity.net. D Infinity Online, new material going up every day. I encourage people to check it out.
And actually, speaking of new material, Amanda, you've got some new material going up on your own website currently.
I do. I've actually started updating Age of Night again recently. We just finished Interlude 2, so that means it's heading into the third story arc. Chapter 15 will be starting this coming week.
Excellent. What can you tell us about Age of Night if our viewers aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, it's my fantasy webcomic, updates weekly, again, now that we're updating, because you know how things happen. It's a story about a group of four friends who are on a quest to free one of them from a reincarnation cycle that makes him a slave to the church in their world, and all the various different factions that are getting in their way to either help or hinder them. And you have mages and ninjas and giant cat monsters.
Excellent, excellent.
Oh, good
All
stuff.
right, and Mike, I think we have one last announcement. As often, we do give away free product on the show, and we have another giveaway tonight.
Yeah, we're doing a giveaway, and we do premium giveaways, not bullshit giveaways, not crap that nobody wants giveaways. Good, new stuff giveaways. Will is going to be posting a link on our Facebook page for the show, on our Facebook event page, and it is for a free download of Lives of Kos. So this is a book with 115 biographies of non-player characters from the Swords of Coast fantasy campaign setting. It's illustrated in part by Will and in part by Amanda. So it's got great illustrations by both of them. We just came out with it a few months ago, and it's compatible with any system whatsoever. So it's good material. Just make sure you're logged into DriveThruRPG or one of its affiliated sites. Click on that link, and you'll be able to download a free copy of Lives of Kos. And we very much hope you'll enjoy it. And before we jump into the show, one last thing I wanted to mention.
Oh, yes.
We've also got 4 new bundles. I forgot to mention that when we were talking about Skirmisher products. Skirmisher's got 4 new product bundles that we just launched within the last week. It's all stuff tying in with the holidays and Thanksgiving, but it's all like deeply discounted stuff. Like we've taken thematic products and put them in a bundle and mark them down by, I think, as much as 42%. So we've got 4 new bundles. If people go to the Skirmisher Publishing main page on DriveThruRPG, we should post the link for that. If they go to the main page and click on the sales link using the new button that you created, Will, if they click on sales,
yes.
they'll be able to see our 4 new bundles up there on the site. So I'd encourage people to check those out. We're taking those down right after Thanksgiving. So at least look at them and see if there's something that interests you, because they're not going to stay up there forever.
Excellent. Well, tonight, as we said at the top of the show, our topic is character art. And before we get into the questions and comments from the audience, I just thought we'd go around the room and just talk about our relationship with character art. I've been drawing for slightly longer than I've been playing role-playing games, and so I've been drawing art for my own characters, for my friends' characters. I used to make money on the side on high school by drawing PC portraits for people at the local game store campaign headquarters. I have always, as a GM, encouraged my players to draw their characters, to sculpt their characters, to make representations of their characters, really with whatever's handy and with whatever they feel comfortable working with, or in some cases what they're uncomfortable working with. But I'll talk about that a little later on the show. So it's something that's very, very near and dear to me. How about you, Amanda?
Well, I've been drawing since long before I was gaming, since I've been drawing since forever. But that was actually one of the first things that ever got me into gaming, was just that it was so visually appealing. A lot of the different stuff, I was already into the fantasy genre and fiction, and then seeing things like Magic the Gathering and like Dungeons and Dragons that all my friends in middle school were playing, and being like, ooh, what's this? It looks really pretty. Ooh, there's elves and there's swords, and what are they doing? Oh, you can pretend like you're in a fantasy novel. Okay, sign me up. So that was definitely the gateway, and one of the things that I still continue to enjoy, obviously, the most now that I'm also working in this industry as well.
Very cool. And how about you, Mike?
For me, I'm speaking from the point of view not of an artist, but of a writer and a publisher. So I've got to paint a picture of what a character looks like in words. And then if we want that character illustrated in a graphic way, an artist has to read those words. So my words have to be, accurate and compelling enough for an artist to be able to understand what I'm saying. And then it's a test of that artist's ability as to whether they're going to be able to take those words and translate them into something that's recognizable as that character for someone who's actually read the words that I've written. And it's interesting. Every artist has their own style, and every artist likes to bring some of themselves to what they do. But for me, speaking as that writer and that publisher, the good artist, from this point of view, is the one that both fulfills the concept that I've created as a writer, that creates something that is clearly my character, but is also still something that bears their imprint. And I've worked with two great artists recently who have really done that in completely different ways. And I guess I'm going to post on D-Infinity Online this week some portraits of the same characters, which are recognizable as those characters, but really bear the specific influences of their artist. One of the artists is Amanda, who really, I have seen, just really tries to get some neat little details. We've got 1-inch tall miniatures where you can actually see that one of the characters has 6 fingers because that's something that we've described. And then Bob Gravenstein has done illustrations of some of the same characters Amanda has. They don't look the same. They look like Bob Gravenstein's characters, not like Amanda's characters, but they're still recognizable as the same characters. So that's sort of what makes a good character artist, as far as I'm concerned.
Very cool. All right, we've got our first question/comment comes from a friend of the show, Richard Penwarden, who wants to know what comes first, the concept for the character or their appearance and the way they're going to look in the artwork. In my own case, when I'm creating a character that I know I'm going to illustrate or even write, whenever I come up with a character in my head for any project, it's actually both at the same time, because when I conceive of a character, what immediately comes into my head is a page of a comic book that character is on. So in this sort of creative flash, I see what the character looks like, what their personality is going to be, and how they're going to talk, because I always imagine some sort of dialogue balloon up there in the corner. So for me, it all just kind of comes in a rush, and I try to build everything off of that intuitive flash when I get the concept. How about you, Amanda?
Well, we have very similar backgrounds, Will, being both trained sequential art types, and that will happen when I'm doing something on my own, where if I'm doing my own creation, then yeah, I get an idea of the character and what they look like, and that's a package that can't really be separated from themselves. Even if I try to redesign a character and go, no, that looks too much this or too much that it's already what it is as far as my brain's concerned. But a lot of times I'm working with other people's work, things that somebody else has already come up with a concept for. And then, you read it the first time and you go, oh, I think it should look like this. And, you make the first few sketches and then you read it over again and you go, yeah, except I totally missed this whole part of the description. Let me try that again. And you kind of have to work your way towards it. So it's kind of a different process when you're coming at it from a production pipeline as opposed to just coming up with stuff yourself.
And Mike, as an author, editor, and publisher, how do you approach this?
Well, if I'm creating a new character, that's actually the easiest thing in the world, because I can just pretty much do what I feel like. I have to dovetail it with the setting, but I don't have that many constraints. But if, for example, I want to incorporate into a story a character that I didn't create, for example, let's say I'm writing a Swords of Coast fantasy campaign setting short story, and I want to include a baker in it. Well, then I'll go to Lives of Coast and I'll look at our baker, Epiusius, who's been created by our Heath Farndon, and I've got to actually familiarize myself with what he's done so that I can accurately portray that character in a story and stay within the canon that we've decided to create. So it all depends what I'm doing, whether I'm picking up somebody else's character and incorporating it, in which case I've got to make sure that I don't violate anything they've done, that I don't contradict anything they've done, that I don't kill their character, but beyond that, I can then impose my own creativity on it. anything that's not excluded by what they've written, I can incorporate into the character. So it's probably similar in a lot of ways to the process that you go through as an artist. You've got complete free reign if it's something that you're conceiving of, but you've got to walk that fine line between expressing yourself and fulfilling somebody else's concept if you're taking somebody else's character and developing it further or incorporating it in something.
And actually, that's related to something that I wanted to ask both you and Amanda. Amanda, coming at it from an illustrator, and Mike coming at it for as a publisher. Have either of you ever run into a situation where there really seemed to be like a schism or conflict between what the character is supposed to look like on the page and what it actually looks like on the page?
That is the story of my life.
Not the story of your life when it comes to working with me, I'll say that.
No, yeah, well, I should say with certain clients. With some people, it's just like, I think a lot of times it's just a matter of communication, where they're not sure what they're trying to tell you, they're not sure how to communicate what they're trying to get, and you just end up with, no, that's not right. No, that's not right either. No, that's also not right. It's like, what is right? I don't know. I need a little more direction than that.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I was at Geek Galaxy this past weekend, and I did an art commission for somebody, and what they wanted this scene done, but they wanted a character in the scene that was modeled after them and that was supposed to look like them. That's what they told me, that he wanted it to look like him, and even had me take a picture of him on my cell phone so that I would have reference there. But every time he came back to check on the commission, he'd want these little details changed. But those little details, almost all of them, were related to the way his character looked. So that by the time this commission was finished, the focal point of the illustration, the character that is supposed to be him in this fantastical setting, didn't look a thing like him.
Yeah.
It was
but it looked like he thought he looked. It looked like he wanted to look.
Yeah, I guess so. It was just it was the strangest sort of like the stated expectations and the real expectations were very divergent.
I would say I haven't really seen that schism when it comes to an artist who is actually trying to depict a character that I've described. And part of that is that I don't like to second guess artists. If the artist has created something and it surprises me or it's different than what I expected, that could very well be okay. That's probably going to be okay with me. I don't like to be overly picky. The idea that I could conceive of every possible way something could look good is incorrect. The idea that I would need to is incorrect. So giving an artist free reign and, like I said, creating something that isn't in contradiction with what we've determined needs to be, but it can be different than what I've conceived of. Where I've gotten that schism is if I've got an artist, and they're usually not professional artists, they're usually people who want to be artists when they grow up, and they are committed to drawing whatever the hell they feel like. So they want to be part of what we're doing, and they want to get some of their art published, so they just give me a bunch of art. It's what they felt like drawing or some shit that they haven't been able to fob off on someone else, and then I've got this shit, and I got to figure out what to do with it. So if you look at, like, our first publication ever, back when we were really figuring out what we were doing in this industry, Experts, the first edition of Experts, there's all sorts of character illustrations and little squibs and drawings. They just don't bear any resemblance to anything that's in the book, and that's because our artists were just like, oh, well, I'm just going to do this. This is what I feel like doing, and we were just kind of stuck with that. So they weren't even trying. They weren't even trying to depict anything that we had described. They were just basically saying, this is what I feel like, and you can either work with it or not. So that's the way I've seen that schism manifest.
Oh, Mike, you just reminded me of something. Many years ago, I wrote a 5-page horror comic. It was all about this baron. There's like a civil war. This baron kidnaps this old crone who supposedly has a gift of prophecy, who he wants to interrogate to figure out from her the best way to defeat his cousin and ascend the throne. And it was all just supposed to be very dark, very dirty, very medieval, and the crone was just the most hideous creature with one bloated, maggoty white eye. It was wonderfully disgusting. Well, the artist who was drawing this horror comic, they sent me their character sketches when they started working on it, and the character sketch for the witch was essentially a pinup model in a robe, like with like a hood, like, very curvy, very
So
very
there's a disconnect there.
posture, and I said as nicely as I could, I said, well, it is supposed to be a crone, a person who's at the very limit of how long you could possibly live in the Middle Ages, and their response was, oh, I finally read your script. I think I know what you want from the crone now.
Yeah, and I have dealt with that before, but I kind of put that all into the category of just doing whatever the hell they wanted. It's supposed to be Baba Yaga, not Yaga the Babe, right?
Although now that you've said it, we have to stat up Yaga the Babe.
Yaga the Babe.
Back when when in the springtime of Baba Yaga's life.
Exactly. Before she was completely evil.
Her hut can have spring chicken legs. It'll be great. Everything's all brand new. All right, our next question comes from David Paul Lehman, who wants to know, how much do you consider the details of the culture of the character that you're drawing? And this is a fantastic question, but I don't want to. I've already had too much time talking about my anecdote. Amanda, how do you feel about this?
Details of the culture are essential, because part of what you're doing with a character is making them distinct and not just like, here is dude. With character art, you're trying to make a distinct character, and where a character comes from, anything that they are carrying with them and on them is informative of where they're coming from, who they're identifying themselves, how other people are seeing them, what kind of impression you get from them, if you see them anywhere, they fit in or don't fit in the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
All these little details, nice things are. I don't want to just draw something that kind of looks cool. I want there to be a reason why all these things are the way that they are. And how different from everyone else. I think that is so very important. If any of that information, I will go into it as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, and I know with a lot of settings, especially settings that have lots of cultural detail in it, you can tell so much about a character. One of the things I talk about Fading Suns a lot. One of the things I love about Fading Suns is they pack so much cultural detail into that game. If you look at the picture of a character, just by looking at what they're wearing and what color it is, you can tell what faction they belong to within that setting, and you don't even have to read a single line of description. And it goes beyond just cultural details, geographic details. I did a while ago a character illustration for a person's post-apocalyptic campaign, and there was a character from was it Seattle that has the Space Needle?
Yep.
Yeah, well, there was one of the characters that I illustrated for the campaign was this warlord from Seattle, and I was thinking, well, I want to communicate that this warlord is from Seattle, and then it occurred to me, oh, the Space Needle. So, like, the badass biker helmet the warlord was wearing had like a mohawk made out of a souvenir Space Needle replicas that were raided from the gift shop of the Space Needle, and that's just awesome. I mean, you look at that, and that puts ideas in your head.
I think that the culture is very important. I guess it could be said that there's a generic D&D culture, and if you were going to be designing a D&D or fantasy scenario, you could get away without really investigating what the specific culture is. You could just fall back on the kinds of tropes that are familiar. But like for our Swords of Coast fantasy campaign setting, we wanted it to be not so much historically accurate, but culturally distinct. So for example, some of our writers kept referring to their characters in Kos, and Kos is in Greece, in the Aegean, they kept referring to their characters wearing togas. Togas. Greeks don't wear togas. Romans wear togas. Greeks of the era that we're talking about would wear generally a tunic called a chiton. They would wear a type of cloak. They wore a variety of different kinds of hats. So if you wanted to show that a character was a Roman, and we've got Romans, then you'd put him in a toga. If you wanted to show a character was from mainland Asia, from Turkey, or from Persia, you'd put him in trousers. But if you want to show a character as a Greek, you've got a very specific type of costume that character is probably going to be wearing, very specific elements, as general as, what we would call like jeans and a t-shirt or whatever. So yeah, I think that's very important. It's important from a storytelling point of view to make your characters distinct and your setting distinct. And it's important from a graphic point of view to make those characters not look generic, to make them really pop out as members of their culture. And that's something I've put a lot of time into researching over the last couple of years to really understand the details that would be evident in a depiction of a character.
Our next question
non-genericize the character.
Yes. Well, our next question comes from Richard Penwarden. Wants to know, when drawing a character, what's the most important thing to get right? Equipment, clothing, armor, weapons, facial features, class, race, setting details, or something else? In my own opinion, like the most important thing really is attitude and personality. Because keep in mind, you're drawing a character. What weapons the character uses, what armor they have. These are the least interesting things to me. What I want to know is, who is this character? What's their personality? So when I draw a character, the first thing I actually start with is the face. I want to know what emotion they're going to be expressing. And they're going to be expressing that emotion either because it's just their character, it's kind of their dominant trait, or because they're having that emotion in response to something else in the picture. So I really care about what emotion they're going to be expressing. And I start with the face, but really the whole body has to do with it. And this goes for whether you're a cartoonist like me or more of a more detailed comics illustrator like Amanda. Your whole body shows your emotion. So it's not enough to just have a scowl on the character's face. I want them to be bent over, shaking their fist. I want every angle of their body to be communicating their rage, their happiness, their sense of humor, their sardonic wit, whatever it is. For me, the most important thing to get right, if you can apply that word to art, is the personality of the character. Amanda?
No, I was going to say pretty much the same thing that you were, as far as, the evil character, the character's personal more than anything else. I will say that a lot of those other details can really be effective to it's like, oh, no, it's more cool. Yeah, that's going to confuse members, obviously. But a lot of the little formal too, and support that kind of idea and get it across, like you neutral or across character where she's I made sure to give her the perpetual rest bitch face because she's just no nonsense. Saying, oh, what's going on? What did you get out of her? Smile. All you're gonna is to inform personality as a fighter, as someone who is taking control of his and all of the small. Like, you can still from her character, her actual personality to that in other places.
And how about you, Mike?
I would say that, and don't I would say that the iconography of the character is the most important thing to me. And don't read iconography as just equipment, but it's really those 2 or 3 details that are going to really make that character identifiable as himself. So, for example, our wizard Pumeo, who has the 6 fingers. When Amanda depicted him, he had in one of his pictures, he has his hand raised. He's casting a spell. There's an aura of energy around his hand, and you can distinctly see that he has 6 fingers. So she could have had that character doing anything, but she very specifically chose to have him casting a spell so she could show those 6 fingers. He has a turban. That's integral to the character for specific reasons. He's got geometric patterns on his robes. So those 3 details, they identify him as Pumeo the Wizard. The 6 fingers, the turban, the geometric patterns on the robes. So I would say that is key. So it isn't just the equipment, it's the equipment in a specific way in the context of that character. As far as expression goes, I think that helps. It's not as important as that iconography, because you're only going to be able to show that character with one expression in one drawing. So it sort of has to be more of a universal look. So the iconography is the most important thing to me.
Another one from David Paul Lehman. Have you drawn your own PC in a game, and if so, which PC drawing of yours is your favorite? Absolutely. I have been drawing my characters ever since I started gaming. It's hard for me to pick a favorite. If I had to, though, would be the old Marvel Superheroes game that I used to play in the 90s, and then on and off again through the early 2000s whenever I visited home, was my character, the Pride. The Pride was a scientist who could turn into a pride of lions, and it was just fun working that out, because if I could never just draw the character once, because their power was based on body duplication. I always drew as many versions of the character as the power would allow, all fighting together, hunting together, tracking together, working as their own self-contained team. And I think part of the reasons why I'm so attracted to those particular character portraits is that the GM in that game actually allowed my drawings of the character to influence the way the character's powers and abilities worked in-game, which was really cool. The main one being, it had been established in the campaign that everyone on our superhero team, we all had these triangle-shaped badges we could use to communicate with each other anywhere in the world. And so when I would draw the Pride multiplied into the whole Pride of Lions, I had actually, because the triangle-shaped badge we had come up with looked so iconic, I had that on every single one of the lions, even though it had been specified that only my character's body duplicated. Clothing and things on my character's body did not duplicate. But because that triangle kept showing up on the duplicate body in the art, the GM just kind of declared, you know what? Small objects duplicate with your character. And that was just such a cool little ruling, and we actually used that to our advantage on a couple of occasions. So I'm going to say that because that's the one where the art influenced the game the most.
And I agree with your sentiment on that, Will. When an artist incorporates something into an illustration that I didn't mention or specifically address, a lot of times I'll pick that up as canon. I'll say, oh, that's a good detail. I'll refer back to that then the next time I write about the character or add it into the bio or description or whatever. Scenario design, all of this is cooperative storytelling. It's cooperative storytelling, and the DM, the writer, the artist, the players, they've all got something to contribute.
Cool. And how about you, Amanda?
A gaming session where one character other characters an exalted world game that didn't like Sector. That's my guy. he's all free. He's from Ghosts because that's what he likes.
And actually, something that thinking of the Pride puts me in mind of. Amanda, have you faced any particular challenges when illustrating a whole party of characters?
When you're doing the whole part of that, you have a kind of position where you're going to play freely and not have them from each other in opposition. The time what it is that's going on, you might work. But the thing is that if you have a whole party, then keeping them distinct, not just look distinct to, okay, you know the stage and that's the fighter and that one's the rogue or whatever, but having, as far as the character design, at a glance look different. Everything other characters make it as have you group them, can you tell them apart? You want to that kind of is for all of them of how well distinguish these characters from each other.
Oh, and Richard Penward has a comment about character sheets, letting us know that to him a good character sheet is a work of art. And I'm going to say yes, a good character sheet is. It's a shame we don't have that many. Regrettably, in my experience in most role-playing games, the character sheet is the ugliest part of any game. It looks like a tax form with all the elegance, artistry, and composition that description implies. Yeah, there are really only a handful of truly good-looking character sheets I think I've ever seen. For as busy as it was, the character sheets for Demon City Shinjuku, the role-playing game, I thought were excellent, especially since they took the iconic occult symbol that the city of Shinjuku has turned into, and they actually built your character's stats around that wheel. So the points, the pentagram, all the symbolic intersections on that occult symbol, you could put in information about your character there. I thought that was cool. The character sheets that used to be in the old World of Darkness were gorgeous, particularly the kind of Art Deco look of the Mage the Ascension second edition character sheet is just truly and the Sorcerer's Crusade sheet is truly gorgeous to look at, but sadly, those are the exceptions and not the rule. I find most character sheets are just hideous.
I have to admit that the sheets that I hand out to characters for the official Skirmisher game sessions are ass ugly. They are basically a character distilled into a monster stat block. They aren't even readable to most characters as characters till I walk them through where everything is. So I'm pretty bad about that. I will have to admit that. The sheets tend to be pretty unadorned, and that's probably something we need to do. We probably need to design a nice Swords of Coast fantasy campaign setting character sheet for different systems because it's a system-free setting. But yeah, that's something I'm pretty bad on. Our character sheets are not a good expression of our characters, admittedly.
How about you, Manny? Do you have any particular comments regarding the aesthetics of character sheets?
Yes. I think they're either going to be completely ugly, or they're going to be trying to cram too much into it, which actually things just too big. Rules wise is trying to get you to put too much on the character. They're trying to have like every awesome covered with little and so where they're going to put this information on there and either that or they're give you a novel to describe your character with trait. So, I don't know. I think stems sort of game design-ish and actual art. It's about carry for well, and it and do it. Amazing. Good job.
I've got another question from David Paul Lehman. What do you call the style of illustration used in 3rd edition D&D? I bland, and I respect the artist that. Pardon?
I said I didn't think it's that bad. Did you say bland?
I said bland. I didn't say bad. I said bland, and I respect all the artists that worked on 3rd edition D&D. I've seen lots of their work. They are all in their own way exceptional artists. That really is. I mean, and you're not going to work on.
Artie Sweckle is the best of the bunch, I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not going to work on D&D unless you are very good. That being said, in general, I just found the art in 3rd edition D&D just very bland, very uninspiring. Characters just seem to stand around. I found that the characters and the monsters, particularly in the monsters manual, the monsters they all looked like they were based on taxidermied versions of those monsters. They didn't really show much life, personality, or energy to me. I feel that if you're going to have art that leaps off the page anywhere, it's going to be in a comic book from the 1960s, or it should be in your role-playing books. I mean, your Monsters Manual, that's a book of threats. That's a book of things that should terrify me and get me quaking in my boots, that should just get my hunter's instincts firing. But it never did that in the 3rd edition, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would agree with you. I don't know that bland is the word I would have used. It's certainly all technically sound. It certainly all looks good. But you're right. A lot of the things that should have been more animated maybe aren't as animated. You know, it's funny. In this industry, if there's one thing that's going to get your book slammed, it's art that somebody has decided doesn't look optimum. And it's usually getting slammed by someone who's got zero ability in anything. It's just somebody who's set themselves up as a critic of the industry. But you know what? Dungeons & Dragons became the most popular role-playing game in the world with 1st edition, which had really shitty-looking art. So I would say the spirit behind the art is more important than the technical aptitude behind it, because that 1st edition art has a lot of animation and spirit, even if it isn't as technically sound as the newer stuff. And the newer stuff, which is technically sound, you're left unimpressed with. So I would say the spirit behind the art is as important as anything.
And how would you weigh in on this, Amanda?
Have we still got Amanda?
Did we lose Amanda? We may have lost Amanda, ladies and gentlemen. If we have lost her, we were happy to have her on the show. If we haven't lost her, I know that she will be jumping in later.
She just messaged me. Crap.
That is a good, concise message. Right. Well, let me see if we've got any other questions or comments to address. Well, I guess actually, just kind of my own thing. I'm glad you mentioned the art with 1st edition in D&D, and I will agree with you. A lot of the art in 1st edition D&D wasn't all that technically adept, and actually, as you had commented earlier on our show page, a lot of it was just the works of Gustave Doré traced and reproduced. And yet, I like a lot of that first, finally having my own reprint copies of those 1st edition books. I love that art because it does reflect the personality of the game, and it does something that so much RPG art now I find lacks, which is you look at that artwork and it gives you a real sense of how the game's supposed to be played. It really gives you a sense of what should be going on in your imagination as you're pretending to go through dungeons and slay monsters and take treasures. And I think that's so valuable because art can be very, very instructive. And yet a lot of modern RPG art, I think they're concentrating so hard on making it look look good, that they're not concentrating on having that art actually communicate something important about the game, whether it's the setting, the tone, the atmosphere. And really that is what's I think the most valuable to me. When I look at a piece of artwork in a game, I want to go, oh, this looks awesome. I want to play this.
Now, I want to state for the record that I like the spirit of first edition art. I like the art. Interestingly, the basic edition game actually had better art than the first edition, than AD&D, interestingly enough. Basic had a lot of great Jeff D art, which Jeff D has been over the last couple of years been re-releasing. A lot of good Errol Otis art. So that was all terrific stuff. I mean, Jeff D's Morgan Ironwolf expressed a character. That was a great expression of a character. But I'm going to tell you, the exception to all of this for me was the stuff ripped off from Gustave Doré prints. I think that's just terrible. That's just hackery. Art which is maybe not as technically wonderful as some of the more modern, high-budget stuff. This I can give a pass. But getting out your art history book with pictures of Gustave Doré etchings and tracing over them and just adding wings or weapons, this is just hackery. This is the Elfstones of Shannara approach to art. It's just awful, and pity the people who think it's good. If you think it's good, then you don't know shit from Shinola, as they used to say. So yeah, the stuff that was just stolen without credit from someone else, I cannot give that a pass at all.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. You've got to do it's fine to be inspired by something. It's fine to base something off of something. It's fine to pay tribute to something, but you don't want to just be ripping something off. That's stealing, plagiarizing, and harnessing inspiration are three very different things.
Yeah, and there's nothing in the first edition, the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, that says, thanks to Gustave Doré for inspiring the images here, here, and here. All there is a little signature from the person who traced over the Doré print. So, why does anyone care? Because that's something that, more people would be trying if they wouldn't get busted so easily because of the internet. This is one thing the internet's been good for. It was harder to bust someone back in the 1970s than it is today.
Well, I was about to say, that's the one big problem with going with Gustave Doré. He's too well known. If he really wants to plagiarize something that looks good, that isn't going to be as obvious, except to medieval art scholars, you go for Albrecht Dürer, my friend. You copy Albrecht Dürer. By the way, look up Albrecht Dürer. That is some amazing art.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we've had a wonderful discussion about character art this evening, but before we sign off, I thought we'd go ahead and do final thoughts. We might have Amanda back.
Amanda, final thoughts, Amanda? I think we've heard Amanda's final thoughts for tonight.
Crap.
Here, I'll text her.
All right, Mike, you go ahead and get Amanda's final thoughts. We'll have you read them, and then you can give your final thought. I suppose my own final thought is just that with character art, it's got to be about expressing the character. And for me, that's personality, that's history. Any detail you can put on that piece of art to make it look more interesting, to suggest that character's history. You do it. I mean, nothing makes a character more intriguing than if you can see a scar on their body, because that undeniably tells you that character has experienced events that have changed them, even if it only changed them physically by giving them the scar. Those are the things that you need to look for. Those are the things that you need to put into your art. Now, how about you, Mike? Either your thought or Amanda's final thought transcribed.
Let me see if we've got a final thought from her. It looks like she's typing. I'll come back to her. My final thought is We often give a plug for our own projects, for the things that we're working on at any given time. And we put a lot of effort into the things we're working on, so I encourage people to check them out. But I wanted to do a shout out to a friend of our venture, Eric Fabiaschi, who is probably the most prolific blogger I know. He's got a couple of blogs where he reviews fantasy stuff, creates scenarios. He is posting stuff almost every single day. So he has a great blog called Swords and Stitchery. If you search, you will find that easily enough, I expect, but I'll post the link to it on the show page. And then he's got another one that's more dark fantasy. That's sort of I don't know if he conceives of it as a subset of Swords and Stitchery, but that's how it kind of feels to me. So I would check out his blogs. He's a prolific guy and a terrific writer, and he's just got new stuff coming out every day. So I know there's more to the industry than just what I'm doing, and I'd encourage people to check out his work.
Excellent. And did we get final thought from Amanda?
Character art doesn't have to look amazing or be technically perfect. As long as it conveys something about the character or resonates with the players, then it has achieved its purpose. Hooray!
Excellent. Well, thank you, Amanda, for joining us on the show. We apologize for the technical difficulties that any of our viewers may have experienced. But
she added one more thing. You guys probably said much the same thing, but I can't freaking hear you. Gah!
Well, for myself, William T. Thrasher, for our special guest, Amanda Kahl, and for our publisher, Michael Varhola, this has been D-Infinity Live, talking about character art, and we will see you all, not next week, because next week is Thanksgiving, but in 2 weeks. We will see you all in 2 weeks.
Something to be thankful for. We don't have a show next week, but we'll be doing something really cool, twice as cool, 2 weeks from tonight.
Absolutely. Good night, everybody.